Industry Voice is back on air. Today we're going to examine the current state of the Eurasian Economic Union, its trends and prospects, and most importantly, the implications for global pharmaceutical companies. And our guest today will help me with that. Evgenia Redkova has been working as a medical writer for OCT Clinical for almost 8 years. Evgenia will shed some light on what exactly Eurasian economic integration means for international pharma and what opportunities drug manufacturers will have for entering foreign markets. So let's get started. Evgenia, we appreciate you being with us today.
Thank you. It's a great pleasure for me to be with you.
So let's start with the basics. Since its foundation in 2017, there has been a lot of conversation around the Eurasian Economic Union and what it entails for the pharma world. So could you please tell us what that means?
The Eurasian Economic Union is the economic integration of several countries. At the moment, there are 5 member states. They are Russia, Armenia, Belarus, Kazakhstan, and Kyrgyzstan, with more than 180 million people of population. And this integration was created to conduct a single policy in various sections of economy and, of course, in the field of drug circulation.
Thank you. And if we look at the Union in terms of common market for drugs, what are the key benefits for pharmaceutical companies?
First of all, harmonized policy. For example, now the results of non-clinical and clinical studies will be recognized by all countries within the Union. Then the reduced barriers, especially for the domestic manufacturers who will have more opportunity to enter the foreign markets. And of course, healthier competition.
What do you think is the fundamental value of the Eurasian Economic Union?
What unique is that with only one application, your drug can get marketing authorization in multiple countries with a rather large population.
Yes, I can see that the upside looks very encouraging. Now let's look at the current status of the project. How does everything look now?
It's obvious that a transition to a single market is quite difficult and time-consuming process, and in a sense painful. But all measures taken have allowed us to take significant steps forward. To this date, there are more than 60 guidelines and recommendations for drugs and more than 20 documents for medical devices. And all these documents describe the processes of non-clinical studies, clinical studies, manufacturing, pharmacovigilance, and many other questions. What is important is that the Eurasian Economic Union Pharmacopoeia has been created. A lot of databases have been launched, and one of them is the database for drugs registered in the EAEU. And some of the documents, for example, expert reports on safety and efficacy of the drug, will now be available for public access. And now we understand that the marketing authorization can be done using 2 ways, through decentralized procedure or through mutual recognition procedure.
What about the transition process? Can you say that it's complete?
Not yet. It is assumed that until the end of 2020, it's going to be a transition period. That means the drug can be registered either by the local procedure or through the Eurasian Economic Union procedure. By the end of 2025, all medical products must be registered in line with the Eurasian economic requirements. That means that all registration dossiers should be updated if that hasn't been done before. And starting from January 2026, there will only be the EAEU market. That means that drugs that haven't been passed the marketing authorization according to these requirements, they will not be eligible for the market.
Thank you, Evgenia. That is quite enlightening. If we talk about clinical trials specifically, has your work been affected by the introduction of the Eurasian Economic Union market, and in what way?
Until a few years ago, we had been working in line with the Russian regulatory local documents. Today, when development study documents, clinical study protocol, informed consent, brochure, clinical study reports, we rely on the Eurasian Economic Union requirements. I can't say that our life has significantly changed, and this is because the EA-EU requirements are harmonized with the requirements of the ICH, FDA, EMA, but at the same time there are some particularities that must be taken into account in the field of biostatistics, statistical requirements, choice of reference products, study design for some groups of drugs. And also, the procedure for registration this year has changed. While earlier, non-clinical and clinical summaries and overviews, they were not needed for marketing authorization in Russia. According to the Eurasian Economic Union requirements, they are obligatory part of registration dossier.
If we talk about the marketing authorization procedure for a drug, how much has it changed?
As I said, the structure of the registration dossier has changed, and now it corresponds to the international CDD format. As I said, now for registration, reviews on quality, non-clinical data and clinical data are required. The procedure of submission, the registration dossier, has gone through some technical changes. Now the document should be submitted in special electronic format, and this process will need special software.
Thank you. And now let's talk a little about the key challenges and difficulties brought on by the introduction of the Eurasian Economic Union.
While a lot of work has already been done, and there are fairly clear deadlines for the stages for the transition process, we can see that some processes are unfortunately delayed, and there are some unclear points to some issues. For example, according to the Eurasian Economic Union regulations, there should be the procedure of scientific consultation before submitting the documents for clinical trial approval and before submitting the registration dossier. Unfortunately, this procedure hasn't worked yet. As I know, there are some difficulties with GMP inspections and getting the Union GMP certificate. In addition, the transition process is a completely new procedure for all participants. Pharmaceutical companies, regulatory authorities, experts, CROs. And of course, there is some uncertainty to some issues, lack of clear rules. Some procedures are being finalized and updated all the time. And we have to keep the thumb on the pulse and track changes consistently.
On a closing note, I would like to ask for your impression of the transition to the common Eurasian Economic Union market.
I would like to comment on this from the perspective of my primary role as a medical writer. What is interesting that historically, medical writers in Russia, they are not only involved in medical writing, in writing the documents, but they take very active part in the development of clinical study design. In other words, they play a role of medical experts too. And before the EA-EU market, it was quite difficult for us to work. There were just a few regulatory documents in Russia, and there used to be significant uncertainty on how the expert would judge the study design and what would be their opinion regarding the possibility of conducting the study. But now, using the Eurasian Economic Union legislation, we understand what regulatory authorities expect from us. Many of these guidelines are harmonized with the international requirements, AMA, FDA, ICH requirements, that makes it easier to work with international companies. Now we can speak the same language. But at the same time, there are some difficulties. It's obvious that we still have a lot of work to do to establish the common EU market. I hope we will be able to work out all the difficulties and eventually enjoy all the benefits presented by these changes.
Evgenia, thank you very much for coming and sharing your expertise. We appreciate it endlessly.
Thank you, Anna.